Good afternoon. I'm Tamani Edie, and I'm a performing arts graduate student from North Charleston, South Carolina. Today, I have the great privilege of honoring one of my mentors, heroines, and role models, Tessa Thompson. I was first introduced to Thompson through her role as Nyla in For Colored Girls. As a young African-American woman who was discovering myself as an individual, I was immediately drawn to her character. Her roles are so important for representation in film because you can't typecast Tessa Thompson. From the tender and deeply rooted performances in Creed and Little Woods to the high-flying, action-packed sensations in Avengers and Men in Black, Tessa Thompson has shown she can rise to any challenge. Her persona on and off screen is honest, delicate, rooted, and impactful. And what's most exciting is knowing that she is far from done with her work. I can't wait to see what she gives us in the future. And we honor her today for all she's achieved so far. Let's take a look.
I think you very well could be the next John Coltrane.
What are you gonna be?
If this is
WNAT Television.
I'm calling about the assistant producer position.
Are you married?
Yes.
Hey.
Producer's assistant's not the best job for a housewife. Why should I hire you?
Because I didn't know that a Negro woman television producer even existed. And all my life, that is all I've ever wanted to be.
It's been a long time since I felt the way that I do now. Like I need you, but I don't know how. It's been a while since I smiled.
You're not being a very good hostess, and what will people say?
My heart.
I can't be the woman of your dreams while also trying to be the woman of my own.
Ladies and gentlemen, Vanguard Award honoree, Tessa Thompson. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Tamani, for that wonderful introduction. This is so surreal, as most things are these days, it seems. I want to first thank SCAD and President Paula Wallace. I want to offer my affection to all the students there at SCAD. I know this has been probably a tricky year, but I am forever in awe of the student, curious and open and reaching. I certainly try to remain that way, but there's nothing like the collective energy of people all engaged in that act of being at once. It is something to be cherished. I'm really humbled by this honor and the company that I'm in with this year's honorees and all of the past honorees. It's timely for me. I feel like this year has illuminated for so many of us the things that are really absolutely essential. And I've definitely had moments where I have felt like the work that I do seems less so relative to the important work that everyone's doing at this time in particular. And then I just remember the utility of story. It was really, for me, only when my ambition moved away from just a desire to express myself and to something that had to do more with trying through story to be a conduit for compassion, for empathy, to interrogate systems, to create some whisper of social change, that I really started to see the magic in what we do. Which is why it means so much to get this honor from a group of people that are interested in studying the act of storytelling. I never got to do that. I sort of learned on the job, so I am in awe of what all of you are doing. It certainly is not always the magic that I spoke of, the kind of magic that can create ripples and cultural conversations, but the moments that it is are the times that personally sustain me. And in this time of reckoning, of reimagining our culture, our world, I think that we deeply need a new vanguard of artists to lead the way. And I am beyond honored to be honored in this way, to meet all of you digitally, and I cannot wait to see what you will do. And I just also want to thank the audience members, the film festival enthusiasts out there. I'm a film lover myself, so yeah, thank you so much, SCAD, for this acknowledgement. I will cherish it forever. Thank you.
Yay. Hello and welcome to the SCAD Savannah Film Festival, the largest university-run film festival in the United States. I want to thank everybody out there for joining us today. I'm Sarah Rodman, executive editor at Entertainment Weekly, and I'm so excited to be joined today by your Vanguard Award winner, Miss Tessa Thompson. Congratulations, Tessa. How are you?
Good. You know, I'm 2020.
Excellent. I love it. I'm so excited to talk to you today. I have 150,000 questions, so just relax. Hang back.
Here for a while, huh?
We are going to be here for a little while. But I want to start with something. I want to start with something you just said about story, because I think it's so crucial in this moment for this audience and for anybody else that might be watching, either as a craftsperson of art or someone who consumes it, for us to be reminded how art is important. And I love that you're talking about story and how that matters right now. And so I'm curious, in this time that we've had to sort of step back and reassess, what have you been doing sort of creatively? What are some of the pursuits that you've been engaged in?
I mean, sort of in the beginning, I mean, I feel like probably a lot of people feel this way, that when the pandemic hit and we were suddenly in our homes, we didn't know how long this would be. And certainly there was this, beginning period where I was rewatching a lot of movies. I was seeing things that I had never seen before, and was sort of in that moment of being a student and re-engaging with the magic of film. And then, as time went on, I really tried, insofar as is possible, to take the opportunity to really learn and grow. I've gotten to perform so much, but I haven't, learned how to edit, for example. So I spent some time learning how to make a sizzle reel for something, or make a deck, make a proof of concept for a piece of work. And certainly leaning in with some of my producerial aspirations. This time has been, it's been an embarrassment of riches in terms of the amount of time that I have to do it, because I'm not working. But obviously it's under really tough circumstances that I think has really made me think a lot about not just the kind of stories that we tell and how we tell them, but really the importance of story. It's really crystallized for me the things that matter, I think, in terms of output and what you say to the world.
And it's interesting because at this point, I mean, even looking at that reel now and seeing all the titles fly by, even you must be like, wow, I've done a lot of work. You are a young woman and you have a long road ahead of you, but you've accomplished a lot. And so I'm curious, as you were saying to the kids, you were not somebody who went to school, you learned on the job. And so when you were first starting out, how did you know that this was what you wanted to do? When was the light bulb moment?
Goodness. I grew up in Los Angeles, so I have proximity to the industry, although I don't have anyone in my family that's inside of the industry. But I was studying classical theater and I was really interested. I was seeing tons of plays. Yes, LA is a weird city to do that, but it exists. And I was working a bunch of odd jobs. And so in a strange way, working inside of the industry in terms of television was kind of an afterthought, but I was so broke at the time that I thought I should at least give it a stab and see if I could, get work that way. And eventually I did. And of course, work begets work. But I think there, it's a series of moments. I still feel like I have moments now when I'll be on set and be inside of a scene, and because of my connection to a scene partner or something, it feels like I transform, in a way, and suddenly I go, oh, this is why I do it, or I get to work with a filmmaker. I mean, I feel really lucky in the course of my career that I've gotten to work with so many first-time filmmakers before their sort of commercial ascent, whether it's Nia DaCosta or Boots Riley, or working with Ryan Coogler early on in his trajectory. And I think those moments of collaboration, of working with someone that's a real visionary and having the opportunity through my work to illuminate things that are dear and near to them, that feels like it continues to make me engaged in what I do. But I don't know if I could remember like a specific moment necessarily. I think I'm constantly re-engaging with why it is I do what I do. And I love to be in conversation with people that know so much about their particular lane, like it's a gift. I never thought I would work on big sort of tentpole movies or big VFX movies. And now it's such a pleasure to get to work with folks that can literally create worlds, and to get to have conversations with them and see what they do. I think it's really getting to inside of the collaboration. To me, that's always the moment when I go, oh, this is why I love what I'm doing.
Yeah, I love that idea of a like rolling epiphany. Like, if only we could all have that. I mean, I think maybe we all do. There are those moments where you're like, oh, this is so great, you know? But I just love that conceptually, that there wasn't just an aha. But speaking of worlds, I mean, one of the things when you look at your filmography and what you've done on television is that you have, as an actor, been really interested in new worlds. I mean, literal new worlds. Annihilation, Westworld, the Marvel movies. And then you've also been interested in these like much more intimate character pieces. And I want to know, do you remember like the moment that it went from, I have to do this episode of Cold Case to pay my rent, to I now have a choice to make Dear White People? Like, do you remember sort of when the world became sort of your oyster to the degree that it does for any actor?
You know, it's funny, you mentioned that episode of Cold Case, which by the way was my first job ever. And the truth is that was that experience totally changed me, because I had come from theater and then I was working with this director, you know, Mark Pellington. And there were moments inside of it when I just didn't, you know, at the time I was like, you know, method. I was trying to learn how to smoke, you know, cigarettes, which I did sort of terribly in the episode. I was listening to jazz because it's set in, you know, 1930 maybe. And then suddenly we were on set and there was one moment where a camera was really close to me in a really physical scene. And I remember almost an experience of coming to and realizing that I was inside of a set. And so that felt like, whoa, there's real magic here. What I didn't realize is that not every experience is like that. So like my first big job after that was Veronica Mars, and I was incredibly aware of the camera the whole time. And so that was a part of the growing pain of learning, you know, how to work on the job. But so I don't know. I mean, I think that, I don't remember what your question was, but I will say that that job was not one just to pay the rent. That was like sort of an exciting moment where I learned sort of this idea of taking what I was always doing on stage, you know, this idea that you could only see that performance, that moment, if you were in the room, and this idea of getting to immortalize it on film became, you know, really, really fascinating to me. And the truth is, I feel like at every, you know, sort of point in my career, I've had the ability to learn so much from the people that I work with, and I see sort of all of the work vital and important. Even if I look back at things that feel like a blemish in terms of the work that I did personally, or it feels like maybe it didn't work out in the way that we all hoped. You know, because a performance is like a lump of clay that you deliver to someone and they sculpt it. But still, I look at sort of my filmography and it's like it all makes sense. It all got me to where I am now. And I think it should be a living, breathing thing that you continue to make discoveries inside of a career. If that isn't possible, and I feel like students ask me all the time, sort of, how do you know that you can do it? And I think one thing that should indicate that you have the fortitude to do it is you continue to be curious and you retain the sort of energy that at every point, no matter how long you've been doing it, no matter when you become a veteran, that it always feels like there's something that you don't yet know, that you haven't yet cracked, and that you have that sort of beginner's, I don't know, intensity around being on set, and also that there's a joy and sort of mystery that it retains for you.
Yeah, curiosity is key. I think in anything that we do in life, maintaining like, what can I do next? What can I learn next? None of us, no matter what we do, will ever arrive at a place where we know everything about anything. And so I think that's such a good attitude to like know that like that's possible. But I love that you bring up Veronica Mars for a couple of reasons, because this is when I became aware of you as a huge Veronica Mars fan. And I feel like they did Jackie dirty, but you did the best that you could.
They did. Well, that was very sweet, because Rob Thomas was so lovely. And, I'm obviously playing the nemesis on the show, and because I was the nemesis, the audience didn't take very well to my character. But the folks at that made the show really wanted me to stick around and wanted the audience to like me. So I think we went on like a redemption arc that frankly the audience was too smart for. But
Totally. But it's so great that now in your new film, Sylvie's Love, which comes out on December 25th, you are reunited with Mrs. Fennell, Erica Gimple.
Yeah.
And so it just brought me so much joy when she popped up on the screen. And I want to talk a little bit about Sylvie's Love because this is the thing that everyone here can be looking forward to as one of Tessa's next big projects. I love the concept. I love the period. I love how romantic this film is. Can you tell people a little bit, just a synopsis of what the film is about?
Yeah, Sylvie's Love is about a young woman who wants to be a producer, has sort of big aspirations in the late 50s in New York. And she meets and falls in love with a young man who's a jazz musician. And it's sort of a sprawling love story, about what happens when you fall in love with the right person at the wrong time. And so it sort of spans some years and things happen. But it was really a joy to make because it sort of is made in the style of these sort of epic Hollywood love stories, whether it's a film like The Way We Were, but it centers, two young Black people, which has not been done all that much, in film iconography. So it was a style of movie that I had always longed to make, and truthfully, I never thought that I'd have the chance to.
Yeah, the period, it's like you think of Douglas Sirk, you think of like these like famous films from the actual period that the film is set in. Yeah. And it was so exciting to see Black love in this context, and that it's not, there are moments in the film that are about sort of being Black in this time period, but that's not the focus of it, that it's about this love story. And you have this wonderful co-star, Nnamdi Asomugha, who, I'm guessing falling in love with him was not so hard.
No, he's lovely. And also, it was such a passion project for him. He found this script and met with Eugene Ash, who's the filmmaker, many years ago, and he learned how to play his instrument. He became a jazz musician to play this part. So I think something that really makes me fall in love with any person is someone that is curious and also is really excited and an enthusiast, and someone that has a tremendous amount of work ethic. So Nnamdi is all those things in spades. So I really had a profound amount of respect for him. And I had seen him at a play in New York, and I had also seen him in a film that he also produced and was in called Crown Heights. I'm not a sports person, so I wasn't familiar with him as a football player, which he was a pro football player previously. But just getting to know his work as an actor, I thought he was just clearly so gifted. And in the course of my career, it's been really important for me to continue to get to work with both off screen and off people that are fresh and coming at this thing from many angles, and Nnamdi also was that.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because you have an executive producer credit on the film, which is fantastic. And I know that you have been branching out into production in other ways. And I'm curious, a lot of actors, are happy to act, and that is a perfectly noble thing to do. But then there are folks like you that are like, I want to get my hands more in it. I want to go behind the scenes. And I'm curious what the inspiration, what the catalyst was for like, I really want to make things.
Yeah, I think it's sort of an extension of what I had already been doing. I've been producing films that I'm in, because that was important to me. And so I would be offered something like with Sylvie's Love, and I would say, I'm happy to do this as a performer, but I would also like the opportunity to produce. And that really just had to do with wanting to learn how to do it physically and learn from folks that had been doing it for a long time. And then I think also it's just an extension of the way that I work. I have always envied the kind of actor that comes to set and they are just so focused in a really incredible, intense way on just their contribution. Like they can tune out everything that's happening on a set and they're just inside of the work that they're doing. I've just never been that way. I'm inclined to come onto a set and see what's happening in the art decoration. If there's something that doesn't make sense for story. I'm typically a meddler that will say that, and also just the way that I collaborate. It's important for me. Like I'm typically super hands-on with costume. I'm sometimes shopping with or sourcing things with the costume designer and also with the set. If it's a set that I'm going to play on, typically I'm in long conversations with art about it and trying to mold it. And so I realized that my process as an actor was already kind of producerial, that I'm someone that really likes to be interested in the macro of story, not just the micro, that investing in the macro for me helps me fall hopefully more seamlessly into the world. And so it just made sense for me. And then also, I'm so pleased that, that folks, say that I'm this source of representation inside of the industry. But the truth is, I think there are some women of color some Black women that look at me and don't see themselves. And so I feel like I'm really interested in inclusion and representation, and I want to be able to do that inside of stories where I frankly don't have a place. And so that became important for me. And it's something that I've just really been interested in for a long time. And I feel really grateful to get to do that in a really robust way at this point in my career. It feels like a real gift. And the truth is, it's hard sometimes to be a body in something. I'm interested in getting to make work that I have some separation from in terms of, all of myself. I think that makes sense in terms of longevity too, that I can be involved in the art of storytelling in varied ways, not just as a performer.
And so do you have interest in directing and writing, or do you feel like producing is your lane?
I do. I've written something, but I kind of have grown out of it. And I've had conversations with friends of mine where that's been the case. For example, Radha, who I don't know well, but I was obsessed with her film 40-Year-Old Virgin. It was also at Sundance at the same time. And I heard that she originally had written, the idea inside of a web series, and then some time passed, and so she reinvested in the story, and it made sense, as a film. The things that I've written in the past, I frankly just feel like they're not as interesting to me. And also, coming out of this time where I feel like, and you and I were talking before we came on, this time of growth, that it's hard to imagine that you leave these 8 months the same person. I'm not sure what kind of story will compel me in terms of, writing or directing, but it's certainly something I'm interested in at some point.
Yeah, I think there's two kinds of people, right? There's sort of people that just give me the 5 steps how to do this. And then people are like, no, I need to understand the whole machine. And it sounds like you're a person that needs to understand the whole machine. And I think that you can't help but keep reaching for things when you're that kind of person. And I think it's so interesting because the choices that you've made in roles too have been extremely varied, which, obviously part of that is luck, I am guessing, about sort of what has been offered to you, how you've been able to network, what people have seen you in. But when you look back on sort of the difference between some of these roles, between Valkyrie and Charlotte and Jackie and Dear White People, I mean, you really have had an opportunity to do different things. And so I'm curious how you make those choices.
Well, yeah, some of it, I mean, some of it has to do, certainly early on in my career, you see what comes your way and you throw things at a wall and see what sticks. I certainly have entered a space where I have more agency, which I'm grateful for. But I've always thought that in terms of anything that you do really as a human, but particularly when you're looking at the breadth of someone's career, that you're sort of as defined by the things that you don't do as by the things that you do. And I look at some opportunities that I've had that I just, didn't sit right with me. And certainly earlier in my career, because it felt like there were so many roles where the characters were just ciphers. They were stereotypes. They were an idea of what a young Black woman was. They were like a sidekick. And so frankly, I went some periods just not working as much because that just didn't make sense for me. And so I feel really lucky in the sense that I've frankly just hung out long enough inside of the industry where there's just more opportunity for someone like me than there was when I entered it. But typically I think I make choices just based on, what I personally find interesting, what the story offers. Something that compels me to continue to do this work is the ways in which we have the ability not just to reflect culture, but to create culture, that political change is preceded by cultural change, and certainly film and television can start cultural conversations. So I'm, interested in that, and also, because I'm very collaborative, just who the filmmakers are. And as I said, I've been very lucky since early in my career to work with people that are just truly brilliant. One of my first films that I really got to, have something big to do inside of a part was a film called Mississippi Damned with Tina May. And it was a semi-autobiographical story for her. And it was shot by the brilliant Bradford Young, an incredible DP, who taught me so much on the job about what it is to dance with the camera. Before working with Brad, I had really felt like the camera was this obtrusive thing inside of a private moment. And Brad taught me about the ways in which the camera is, something that you're also in conversation with, and you're so grateful the closer that it gets, because you can communicate things to it in a way that is deeply personal. But I think it's really an organic process. And sometimes, there's certainly things even more recently in my career that I think of the way that I made that choice, and maybe I'd make another choice. But as I said before, everything gets you to where you are. So I feel really grateful, even for the foibles. I'm constantly, just learning.
But it's so interesting because some of the choices that you've made, to me, I would imagine that for Color Girls, which is just a sacred text for us, essentially, was a pivotal moment for you. But maybe that's a different audience that approaches you than the Thor audience, And there's obviously some overlap between those two things. But I'm curious if your approach is different at all.
Oh, in terms of just the making of the thing. Yeah, because there's just technical demands that are different. For Color Girls was huge for me. And I only got that part because the brilliant Journey Smollett had to pull out of it. And so he was in a real bind. And so I got that part, just because she had to fall out. And she's just exquisite, such an exquisite performer. But I had stolen a copy. I had an original like old copy from the 60s that I had stolen from a library in Brooklyn. I'm so sorry if anybody from that library is watching, but I kept this library book. So I had been engaging with that work, Ntozake Shange's work for a while, since I was like a young woman myself. So getting to play that on screen was tremendous and really, truly a dream come true that only came true narrowly. Thanks, Journey. But yeah, there's different demands. When we make the Thor movies, for example, those crews are so huge. So even just taking up space in that way, or the demands of doing things against green screen where you feel, sometimes you feel, which is, you feel dumb. You feel really, sometimes you have like egg on your face because there's like, these big Beyonce fans, but you're not Beyonce. And the cape, it took me 2 months to realize you could just have a smaller cape and then could VFX it. So I was like with this long cape and it would fly in my face and the sword and get stuck in my hair and the whole thing. And you're like doing that, these really intense, you're sort of like yelling, and then someone in the background is eating a sandwich and you're like, I get it, because the days are long and we don't take proper breaks, so you got to eat a sandwich. And so that job really demands a certain level of concentration, and also, frankly, not taking yourself too seriously. I think that's something I learned in spades from Chris Hemsworth, is he just has such dexterity because he's playful and silly, and so getting to work, I'm so grateful for the experience of getting to work on Marvel, because I came from the real sort of like, classical theater, small indie films, cinema verite, and then suddenly I'm in this Technicolor world that requires you just to let loose and be silly and have fun. So there's certainly different demands in the job, but I think for me, I'm also always interested in whether it's big or small, genre or not. I think the thing that compels, at least for me as an audience member, into a story is something that feels human and honest, I guess. Like I'm always sort of searching for what is the simple human question that's posited by this piece of work. Like, what am I offering to the human out there? watching. And so it kind of always starts from that, regardless of whether I have a cape or not.
But it's so funny because I feel like Valkyrie is actually one of the most relatable characters in that entire universe. Just that sense of frustration.
Yeah.
I think it's just so real. Like, I was like, girl, I feel you. Yes, these people and their ridiculousness. But I love that you said that. I talked to Jamie Foxx recently, and he was talking about sort of like the serious actor thing versus like the superhero thing. And he's like, you know what? It's all work. It's all fun. You learn something from all of it, and the people that you interact with. And to your point about Journey, maybe Journey isn't making Lovecraft Country right now. If she had done For Color Girls, her whole trajectory might have been different. So I'm sure she's grateful.
Completely. I think that's totally the case. I remember early on in my career, I tested for a show. I'm not going to say which, but I tested for like a teen show, and I didn't end up getting it. And I remember, oh, it's my dog, Coltrane.
Your dog's name is Coltrane?
Yeah.
I love it.
Hey, come here. I love, like, my favorite part of this time is people with like their kids and
Totally
kid in the background. Coltrane. Yeah, so I remember at the time being really sad about this show not getting on the show, and the show ended up going for I think 6 or 7 seasons. And I remember a couple of years ago seeing the actress that got the job and just thinking, wow, like we would literally have maybe traded places.
Yeah, it would have been a whole different world. I mean, for all the hardship, I always say we have to be grateful, because if you're happy where you are, you wouldn't be here without that. And I just want to talk quickly, because you know how an enormous Rocky Creed fan I am. I want to talk about Bianca for a minute, just because I feel like that's such a good character for you. And you took something that could have been, like you were saying, a cipher. It could have just been your girlfriend. It could have been the throwaway role. And like really, maybe you need to play him some jazz.
Coltrane. He's such a sweet guy, but he's like, if he hears just anything happening in the neighborhood, he has something to say about it. I recently said that he sort of has Karen energy. He's like a
wait. What kind of dog is it? I love that it has Karen energy.
I'm gonna try to get him down here. Coltrane, come here.
Oh my God, I love it.
He's a rescue. Okay, here he is. Oh, he might have to just stay, otherwise this.
No, absolutely. Oh, hello. He's definitely more chill now. Oh my God, how long have you had him?
A year.
Oh, hey, chill out, man. Just be cool. Be smooth.
Oh man, I know I should play him jazz more often, because he gets really worked up.
Yeah, a little Kind of Blue and you'll settle him down. But what I was saying was, with that character, like, you took something that could have been, and obviously some of this is on the screenwriter as well and the director for like doing a good job, but you took a character and really breathed like flesh and blood into it in a way that I thought was super interesting. And so I'm curious your thoughts on that character.
Yeah, I feel so grateful just to have gotten the chance to work with Ryan on that. He's one of the most deeply collaborative directors that I've ever worked with. And, initially, because he's so into the idea of authenticity, he really wanted Bianca to be played by a singer, by someone that just made music, and they would make their sort of acting debut. But Mike is such a seasoned, actor. He's been acting since he was a child. So it was really hard to find someone that could challenge him and go toe to toe with him inside of the performance and also do the music. But one thing that was hugely important to Ryan was that I also wrote and performed that music, that I spent time in the studio. And so I felt really lucky that I got to work with now. I mean, I think he has like every award, but got to work with Ludwig, and we just basically hung out in the studio for 2 weeks and made this music. And that was a way in. And then Ryan and I would trade emails and text messages. I mean, we know the day and time Bianca was born. We know her whole origin story. We know what school she went to in Philadelphia. We traded photographs. He took this photograph of a girl that he saw on the train, and she became this idea, not just the way that she was dressed, but something about the way that she looked. The intensity behind her eyes became, sort of this roadmap for finding Bianca. And something that was really hugely important for him was in the context of this very male movie, this sports film, that it felt like the female character occupied her own space, that even when she wasn't on camera, you imagine that she had a rich, full life and she had agency inside of the narrative. And that was something that he really let me be a part of. You know, we brainstormed for a long time around what the particulars of her character could be. So there was a huge, growth that happened for the character between the time that I had early readings with Michael, got the job, and what we see on screen is really, we would do rehearsals, for example, together, where Mike and I would get to, play the scenes in our own words, and Ryan would make voice memos, and then he would make edits to the script based on that. There are scenes in that first Creed that we made that are, taken from maybe 25 minutes of us just doing an improv inside this apartment together and the camera finding us. And so that process, even though it's in the context of a studio film, a sports film, it felt like making us, an indie film. And that's been such a joy to get to work with filmmakers that still take that spirit, the way that they like to work, and they do it regardless of the scope of the project. And so I feel like when I look at that film, I haven't seen it in years. I think I've only seen it twice, but it really, feels like something that we made together, that I got to be inside of the DNA of the piece.
Yeah. And, what's interesting to me, going back to the New World concept, is that you are in these things that people are deeply fans of, Westworld and Annihilation. But there is a part of these where we're just like, girl, I don't know what's happening. Do you know what's happening?
Like, you feel confused by the narrative itself?
Yeah.
Yeah, that might be my fault.
No. I think it's just there's so much going on. But what's the appeal for you for those things that are truly fantastical? I mean, the opposite of a grounded, sort of romantic, intimate relationship, but this whole new world, literally. What do you love about that?
I like so many things. I like the idea, that inside of the work that we do, we have the ability not just to show the world as it is, but as it could be or as it should be, And so I love being in the future for that reason. I love being able to think about, like, what does the future look like? On Westworld, I really love some of the central questions. Obviously, it's like a high concept piece, but it's essentially just about the nature of our reality, about sentience, about what it is to be a human, told through, the protagonists, these robots, these hosts. But I really loved, particularly in the last season and the season before it, this idea of getting to unpack what it means to live inside of real algorithmic determinism, which I believe is sort of there, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. And so I feel really grateful to get to work on something that interrogates that and reminds me to think about that myself, because I'm on my phone constantly, and I don't think about the ways that it shapes my behavior, it shapes my worldview. And I think it's really important to be thinking about that as we've entered a space where our relationship with technology is so normalized. We're not really making sure that we're moving through those spaces with caution and with care and consideration. So I love being able to do that inside of science fiction, to ask big questions in interesting ways through the genre. And then just personally, I selfishly like to make the sort of things that I like to watch. And as much as I love to watch like a very realistic, human drama, I also love to watch something that has scope and size and aesthetic and takes you into a world that's unlike the one that we're in, or is a heightened version of the one that we're in. I think that stories can be real portals, and I love to play inside of worlds that that take you somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. That show is such a good reminder too of the, like, just because we can do something, does that mean we should do it?
I know.
Like that, even like in our actual sentience, as far as we know, in this world that we're living in right now, like the what we give away when we like engage with technology and not with one another. I mean, it's just so interesting.
I know. I really, it's funny you should mention that, because I think something's really interesting to me about thinking about like period pieces. For example, one of the pleasures of working on Selma, in addition to getting to meet legendary, John Lewis and Diane Nash, was this idea that you could also ask real questions of yourself about how you would show up in that moment. And I think the less you know about history, the easier it is to imagine that you'd be on the right side of it. And so when I was making Selma, I was really having to ask myself, like, how would I have shown up? And I think a similar thing with Westworld, it's something that's fun to ask myself and I don't really have an answer, is like, if I were, going into the park, how I would behave.
Right. What would I want my adventure to be? I think that's a really scary question. But before I let you go, I always like to ask folks if there was a piece of advice that they got from somebody along the way, either practical advice or conceptual advice, or just, advice about packing, but that's something that's like stuck with you over the years that you would like to pass along.
Practical advice.
I mean, it could be about auditions or, psyching yourself up, or just anything that like has stuck with you that it pops into your head.
I'm sort of annoyed that the thing that's popping into my head is not more sage wisdom. But I remember one time someone telling me, this has changed, but when I first started auditioning, there was so much attention on how you looked. And oftentimes you'd get like a little blurb that would tell you like how the character looks. And I always found that really hard. And someone told me, dress to feel a certain way, not to look a certain way. And I always thought that was an interesting piece of advice.
Yeah, I actually think that's good advice for life.
I think so too. Yeah, I think so too. This idea of making sure that you are continuing to engage with what your own truth is, and not how it might look to everybody else, to not think about perception, but really to think about how something fits on you. And I think that's certainly true of life. Like that was a big thing early on too, with saying no to certain opportunities, as I realized it maybe would get me perception-wise somewhere, but I would be somewhere that wasn't meant for me.
Right, exactly. I think that's excellent advice. I can't thank you enough. This is all the time we have for today's conversation. I want everybody out there to give a big virtual round of applause for our panelist, Ms. Tessa Thompson. And thank you all at home for your participation today and for supporting the art forms that make movie magic a reality. And I want you all to enjoy the rest of the SCAD Savannah Film Festival. Tessa, thank you so much. It was so good to see you.
It was so good to see you too. Bye, everyone.